the Art Box Podcast, where creativity lives, but more importantly, where stories are told. I'm your host, Steve, and here we believe every piece of art carries a story, and every artist has one worth sharing. From theater and song to archaeology and to our public lands, we explore the many ways creativity shows up in the world around us. Because I'm always happy to view a work of art, but I'm never fully satisfied until I've heard the story behind it. That's what we're all about, unpacking the journeys, the moments, the people, and the meaning that bring art to life. So whether you're an artist, a storyteller, or simply curious, pull up a chair. Let's open the box.
Oh, effortlessly beautiful. That's Venice and being you.
So, Kathryn, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
I appreciate this.
Well, I do want to begin by saying I've started your book, The Art of Noticing.
Oh,
So I'm about three chapters in. I'm really intrigued. I really am enjoying it. Format you landed on with sentences and tiny paragraphs.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's the way I think.
I see. Yeah.
So, and the way I've been writing it for 3 years.
Uh-huh.
So here and there, I come up. But thank you, I appreciate it. I'm happy with the way it came out. I'm probably very glad that I didn't have anybody edit it because it probably wouldn't be out. Because I'm sure there would be a ton of changes, but I'm happy.
Yeah, good. You should be. I'm really just three chapters in and really enjoying it. So
Okay, well, thank you. So, Kathryn Hunt, thank you for joining us on the Art Box on this. Let's see, it's a Thursday.
I think it is.
So, and we met because I went to your fabulous memoir workshop in Goldfield, Nevada, and people are going to go, "Where is Goldfield, Nevada?"
Yes.
And when did they start having workshops there? But it was a glorious time. And you were such a good teacher.
Oh, sweet.
Leader. I don't know you were a
Thank
teacher.
you.
You're more of a leader. I don't know that there's teachers anymore. So, although I need to be taught a lot.
Well, I was really grateful that Astrid and Richard invited me to come. Esmeralda High Desert, what is it, residency or
Something institute.
institute, yeah.
Did you have a good time up there? Were you able to write?
I worked on a manuscript. I had to get a manuscript out the door, poems out the door. It's a finalist in a contest. Yeah, I needed to put a full manuscript together and get it out the door. So, yeah.
Hey, and
So I worked on
Kathryn,
that, and I love editing. So
you love
very good.
editing?
I do.
So editing your own stuff, or were you editing someone else's?
My own. Like anytime I open a file on my computer, it's going to change.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start off telling us about 7-year-old Kathryn.
I was south of Seattle, out by what people call SeaTac now. We lived in a housing development, a new housing development, lots of young families moving in. But it was still rural south of Seattle and east of Seattle. There were still farms and dairies, and my best friend lived on a farm adjacent to the development. So I was an outdoor kid, and I got to roam around their farm and ride their horses, and that's what I was up to, making things as well.
Oh, you were making a lot. So you had the creative bug early.
It turns out I did. It was a combination of liking to be praised, right? And teachers and my mother were happy when I did certain things.
Oh, okay.
Music. And my mother had an upright piano. I'm not sure where, I'm sure it was used. I'm not sure where she got it, but I used to compose on that piano. I'm going to turn my sound off on this phone. I had siblings. I had 3 siblings, older sister and 2 little brothers.
Yeah. Were you mean to your little brothers? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
They were born 1 year and 2 weeks apart, and they behaved like twins. So they were their own unit. So I wasn't a part of their play very much. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was okay. That was fine.
So now you said you were organizing neighborhood plays as a child. You want to talk about that? I can only imagine that was pretty fun.
It was very fun. Well, I loved the soundtracks from Rodgers and Hammerstein's movies. And so they were always around their movies, and we'd practice a few of the songs and jump around on our patio and make our parents sit down after work.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah. It was fun. And I got to boss, my sister and other kids around and how we were going to do it.
So you were a director.
I was the director, the instigator, really.
The instigator.
Producer.
Now, you talked about that your journalism teacher, I assume this is in high school, changed your life by finding you a scholarship?
Yeah, I really liked my journalism class. It's where I started to take photographs, which I still do. Not as much as I used to, but I still do that. And I made films, part of my life, my creative career. So career as such as it has been.
Yeah, you said that your journalism teacher found you a scholarship.
Yeah, well, she asked me if my parents were divorced when I was around 10, and my mom raised 4 kids on her own. We didn't have much money. And my journalism teacher approached me to ask me what what my thoughts were about going to college. And I said, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. And she said, well, let me see what I can do. And she found me a scholarship to the University of Washington. I went to the University of Oregon later, but I started at the University of Washington in 1968. And by the spring of that year, there were Washington State National Guard on our campus with bayonets drawn. So I had a broad and awakening during that freshman year about what my government thought of me protesting and exercising what I understood were my constitutional right. We were just met by, armed and uniformed men on campus, and then off campus, the Seattle police regularly beat kids in the demonstrations off campus. So
there were some dark times.
Yeah.
How great was it, I guess, that you had someone believing in you before you believed in yourself? Or did you believe in yourself and there was just not money?
It was wonderful to have her, kind of take me on board and take me in hand and say, I think we can do this. I think you can do it. Because I hadn't really considered it much. So yeah, it was a turning point when I look back on it.
You've led an interesting life, obviously. You've been a waitress, a ship scaler, a short order cook, a bookseller, a food bank coordinator, a filmmaker, and now you're a poet and memoirist. Do you think artists actually need ordinary jobs where we meet extraordinary people?
I didn't really have a choice. I went to work as early as I could. I wanted money in my pocket, my own money. So I babysat and did things around the neighborhood. I think waitressing was it was open to me, right? I was a young girl. I could get a job. I got minimum wage. And I think it was a place to learn about people who I didn't know, I worked a graveyard shift when I was 18 years old. A restaurant near downtown, but south of downtown. And it was a restaurant called Little Sambo's. For instance, the gay bars would dump out. Well, the bars in general would dump out at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? But for some reason, a lot of gay guys came into that. And that was a real awakening to wait on them. And they were safe guys. They weren't going to harass me. They had, they were just hanging out and getting eggs and bacon at the end of a night of drinking. And so to be able to look at them and see that I was seen by them in a different way than I was used to, that was a revelation. And to see men come in with makeup on, that opened my world up.
Yeah, it's a place to meet different people.
For sure. Waitressing always is. Yeah, it is.
And the graveyard shift. Oh, my goodness. So, want to talk about the Venice Film Festival? I'm absolutely so impressed with the Venice Film Festival. That had to be an unforgettable experience. What did it feel like?
Well, a woman called me early in the morning at my apartment in Seattle. This was later. I was in my 30s, and said, "Congratulations! You should be really happy. We're inviting you to Venice with your film." So it was an independent film. I had an idea that I might be able to make a film. I don't know why. I knew very little about it, but I'd been working for public television in Seattle for 5 years, and I'd seen people make films. But I determined, because photography was really important to me in high school and later, and because I made photographs, I really wanted to shoot in film. So I shot my films in film, not in video. And this is, before people could haul around video cameras. They were too big. They were mounted on tripods. So I shot on film, and which meant it qualified to go to film festivals, right? And it went to maybe a dozen film festivals around the world and another dozen around the United States. And it was the story of a young girl named Barbie Wilson, who was 10 years old at the time. And she and her mother and brother and sister were all homeless in Seattle. And so that's what the story was about. And I always felt that Barbie, who was this kind of adorable 10-year-old, I'd interviewed dozens of kids, but she knew how to talk about her life. She was both really cute, young child, precocious, and she wanted to talk about her life. And she knew how. And it was her film. It was really her film. She was the character. Her mother was in it, and her brother. And I followed them around for around 9 months, shooting in all kinds of places that they lived. And Venice itself was fabulous. You know? Venice was Venice, and it was some years ago, and it wasn't quite as overrun as it has become since. And we, because I was the director of a small independent American film, but Woody Allen and Robert Altman were there. It was, and we were all, I was the director, and the festival considered me a director, and I got to me and my husband got on the Vaporettos they weren't the Vaporettos. The Vaporettos are the public transportation, but the limousines on the water came and picked us up and took us to the events, and it was very fun. But Venice itself is beautiful. It's an old city full of art. And
are you talking Venice, Florida, or you're talking Venice, Italy?
Italy.
Oh,
Italy.
Oh, this is even more fabulous.
Yeah, it was wonderful. She was right. I was really honored. I couldn't believe my good luck. It was my first film, and it was just stunning to have them call and ask for it. And then it showed at the Venice Film Festival. It was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to say Venice, Florida. Venice. There is Venice, Florida, too, because we live there. Not that I'm trying to say Venice, California is any less exciting than Venice, Italy. No, Venice, Italy is more exciting.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It was wonderful.
So what challenges did you have with your film?
Well, the issue for films, whether they're documentary as my films were, or feature films or live action films, is always distribution. It's always distribution. And I did and do have an educational distributor. And so lots of universities have purchased that film over the years and use it, because I was following Barbie and her siblings had been in foster care while her mother was in prison. Her mother was addicted to methamphetamine. So the film also took me into another world, a totally different world, of people who lived in another country, really. That's how I felt. We'd get in the car and we'd get all our gear, and it felt like we drove into another country to go to neighborhoods where they lived and to see how they lived. And I really liked her mom a lot, but she was an addict, and life for those kids was really difficult.
What challenges did you have, like finding them where they were at?
Well, I approached it as you would a feature film. I needed to cast my film. And so I went to lots of different places, homeless shelters and women's shelters, and I interviewed probably, 25 families, moms, dads, children. I was really at the point of kind of giving up on the idea of making a film about. There were so many homeless people. This is after Reagan turned people out of mental institutions.
I remember that well.
Yeah. There were lots of homeless people, as there remains true in big cities around the country, including Seattle. And it meant I went into hotel rooms with people I didn't know. I knocked on their door. They were, sitting around doing drugs, or they sitting around trying to figure out how to put a little money together to feed their kids. And nobody threatened me. I never felt threatened. I went to Seattle, housed some of it, families who were homeless in motels out north of Seattle on Aurora Avenue. They would give them vouchers for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And the fourth week, they were homeless again.
Oh, okay.
And then they qualified for another voucher for 3 more weeks. And then they were homeless again. It was a very cruel system. So, I went where they lived, where they were trying to live. And I said, will you tell me your story? What's happened? And I found in making films what I'd kind of begun to see when I was a high school journalist was that people want to tell their stories. You just need to ask some questions, as you know, Steve, and people will tell their stories. That's what I found. Whether or not they were going to be right for my films was another question. But I found that people wanted to talk.
Yeah, I'm sure that had to be exhilarating but heartbreaking.
Absolutely. Both, for sure. No, I made a number of films about kids who had been in foster care or were in foster care, and the challenges of families. And, the people in the foster care system try to do their best on the whole, but it's a rigged system, and it's full of poor women and their children, poor dads and their kids. That's who's in the foster care system. Some kids do need protection from their families for one reason or another, but you can find that in wealthy neighborhoods as well. So middle class homes as well. So it's really a system that's full of poor people.
Yeah, I'm sure. Actually, I've seen. I don't know whether they've gotten any better or not. I know when I was up at the Cowboy Poetry event in Elko this past year, so I stayed at the because I don't care about hotels. I go to the cheapest hotel. I was at Motel 6, and there was homeless family next to me. Because they had a wheelchair sitting outside where they would go smoke, and I talked to the lady who was behind the counter about that, and she said, they're given a voucher for so long.
That's right.
And she said, then we have to kick them out. And she said a lot of them will trash the room. So, well, but where are they going? It's not like so. And this is in the middle of the wintertime. It was cold outside. Yep.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking, and I made a series of films that really had, people who were in that system. And so they were also people who were involved with the, what we call the justice system on various levels, with the law, with the jails, with the prisons. I really learned a lot listening to their stories. Yeah. And especially their kids.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you keep up with any of them?
With a couple of them, I do. Yeah, I do.
I want to talk about Jacob Lawrence.
Oh, when I went to the university, I signed up for art classes, and Jacob Lawrence was one of my teachers. I didn't really know who he was at the time, but he was a wonderful instructor. And I was in his class for a couple of quarters. Yeah.
So
I love his work. I love his work. I got introduced to his work that way, so it was really wonderful.
was there anything that he taught that had nothing to do with painting, but everything to do with being an artist?
Take risks. Take risks. If you don't, try things that somebody gives you an idea or you come up with something and you just go for it. Yeah. I think that was his attitude. But his work itself, he was he was trying to teach us technique, really, and how to paint and sculpt and find our way as artists, try to see if we had the competence to be a visual artist. I did not in that. I didn't pursue that genre. But his work itself is, seminal in terms of integrating wonderful painting with social and political issues. Because he really was a painter who was a historian of Black life in America.
Steve, I had to jump in for a moment when our guest mentioned studying with Jacob Lawrence, because that is one of those names where you stop and think, wait, you actually studied with Jacob Lawrence. Lawrence wasn't simply a professor of art. He was already one of the most important American artists of the 20th century. Born in Atlantic City in 1917 and raised largely in Harlem, Lawrence grew up surrounded by the extraordinary creative energy of the Harlem Renaissance. As a young artist, he became interested not only in painting people, but in painting history, particularly stories of Black Americans that were often missing from history books. And he did something fascinating with those stories. Instead of trying to squeeze an entire history into one enormous painting, Lawrence often created paintings in series, almost like individual frames in a film or pages in a graphic novel. His masterpiece is probably the Migration series. Created when Lawrence was only in his early 20s, it consists of 60 small paintings telling the story of the Great Migration, the movement of millions of African Americans from the rural South toward cities in the North and West. 60 paintings telling one enormous story. Lawrence combined simplified figures, strong geometric shapes, and bold areas of color with short written captions. You don't simply look at one painting, you move from one to another and watch history unfold. And here's an amazing bit of art history. When the series was exhibited in New York in 1941, Lawrence became the first African American artist represented by a major mainstream New York gallery. The paintings attracted so much attention that Fortune magazine reproduced 26 of them. Lawrence continued creating narrative series about figures including Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Toussaint Louverture, and John Brown, as well as paintings about Harlem, war, civil rights, and everyday working people. But there was another Jacob Lawrence, the teacher. He taught at several institutions before eventually moving west with his wife, artist Gwendolyn Knight. In 1970, Lawrence arrived at the University of Washington in Seattle, first as a visiting artist and then as a professor. Think about that classroom for a moment. Here's a man whose paintings were already hanging in major museums, whose work had changed the way American history could be told through visual art, and he's standing in front of a room of students talking about composition, color, observation, and storytelling. Lawrence once described himself as both an artist and educator, and I think that's an important part of understanding him. For Lawrence, those two lives weren't really separate. Teaching, painting, and telling stories were all connected. Today, the University of Washington's Jacob Lawrence Gallery carries his name and continues that legacy. So when our guest Kathryn casually says, "I studied with Jacob Lawrence," I think we need to appreciate just how extraordinary that sentence really is. She didn't simply study with a professor of painting. She studied with one of America's great visual storytellers. Okay, Kathryn, I'm finished being slightly jealous. Back to you and Steve.
Film depends on collaboration. Poetry's, for the most part, solitary. What have these two art forms taught each other inside you? Do you hear poems or do you see them first?
Hear them. Hear them, yeah. Like the Russian poet Osip Mandelstam always said he would listen for the poem. he would listen for the poem. And I do too. I mean, even before I knew about Mandelstam, it was always about listening. And so in a way, it's like your book, The Art of Noticing, because it's about really just having the presence to just tolerate sitting with a pen in your hand and a notebook open and waiting for something to come, you know. And I didn't really recognize that till later, you know, but it was when I was young, I didn't think of it that way. But that's really what I think poetry is about. Film in its own way, documentary film, shooting documentary film. I've never shot a feature film, but documentary, the way we shot was definitely about waiting. You know, you can't run a film camera all the time. You have to, you know, let it roll, and then you have to cut, and then you roll it and cut. But you have to think about, as life is going by, you have to try to sort out when to turn the camera on, when to say to your cinematographer, let's do it, let's roll it, let's get going, and when to say, I think we have it, you know, because you don't know what you don't, like your book, it says over and over again, you don't know what you have really. You're trying to follow a number of threads that may turn into a story, but you don't know what the story really is until you finally call a wrap for us, it was the end of 9 months of shooting, and you go into edit suite and you just hope like hell you have a story there.
So yeah, one of the things that's become important to me, and I mentioned it during the book, is silence.
Yeah.
Or negative spaces. So how important is silence to your creative life?
Central. Yeah. It's you know, it's part of what I need in order to write. I have a room above our shop, you know, where my husband has all the tools and old camping gear we don't use anymore. And but I have a wonderful room, and I'm surrounded by trees, and this is where I do my first drafts. Well, it's really where I edit too, you know. And so I really need silence and you know, hours that go by without me placing any kind of having to have something on myself, having to do something. And that's not always easy.
No,
but that's where, for me, the art comes from, whether it's prose or poetry.
Well, I'm excited that you're surrounded by trees, so you can go into the backyard and forest bathe at will then. Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're surrounded by a small, you know, second growth forest. We just sit on a little something shy of an acre, but we've made a beautiful garden together. So yeah, we're either work in it or sit in it almost every day this time of year. Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine the sweet smells of when you go outside and you can just sit there and smell freshness. And you know, I like our smells here too, but ours are desert smells, and it's so nice.
Yeah,
you know, the trees. The trees give off the good stuff.
Yeah, well, it's in my garden. It's time for the lilies to bloom. Those are some of my favorite flowers. So they're in bloom right now, and they're highly scented flowers. I love it.
Would Kathryn Hunt have written different poems if she had grown up in Manhattan?
Yeah, definitely. I think place has a lot to do with my work and where I travel. Also, when I go to other countries or just going down to the desert to meet you and everyone down there in Nevada. I don't know if anything from that will end up in a poem, but place and land and I think we travel in part to see different trees and be near another body of water. I live in the maritime Pacific Northwest. It's the opposite of where you are, Steve.
It's very opposite.
Yeah, I mean, it's just waterways from here up to the Arctic. Bays and channels and And then down south, it's another 100 miles of waterways. And the great nations of this area, the indigenous nations that are here, they have long been maritime travelers. Beautiful canoes. They were just here in Port Townsend, and they come every summer, have since 1989. There's a canoe journey here every summer. And it's grown to be a very large thing. Some years we've had 100 canoes pull in here. And they're all the poolers they're called. They paddle through these these are big waters up here. I mean, they're big, roily, what can be pretty roily waters to pass through. And they're in, canoes that are 18, 20 inches deep. And they're some of them are full of young people. They always have people who are experienced in guiding and whatnot. But they were just here for the canoe journey, they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, because where the Pacific Ocean meets the inland waters, like you said, royally, it's pretty messy.
Well, it is where those two waterways meet up here, the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the Pacific, where south of us, of course, is the Columbia River, and that's a notoriously dangerous. You have, if you're in certain kinds of boats, you have to be guided into that passage because too many boats are already at the bottom of that entry, Yeah, it's wonderful to see these canoes out on these waters again. A very important cultural renewal the last, almost 40 years among the tribes here. The nations here. Yeah.
Before we get back to today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the two new books that have recently found their way into the world. The Art of Noticing is a collection of observations, essays, and reflections inspired by years of photography, podcast conversations, travel, public lands, and the simple practice of paying attention. It's a reminder that wonder is often hiding in plain sight if we slow down long enough to notice. My newest release, Sandcastle Windows, is my first work of fiction, set between present-day Nevada and the Paris art world of the 1870s. It explores a question that has fascinated me for years. What if you could step inside a future memory? It's a story about art, friendship, time, and the moments that shape our lives long before we realize their importance. Both books share a common thread, the belief that ordinary moments often become the memories we treasure most. To learn more about The Art of Noticing and Sandcastle Windows and my other children's books, visit my Amazon author page. And now let's get back to the Art Box. You founded poetry on the Salish Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So what inspired you to create a place where poets could gather instead of simply writing alone?
I wanted a deeper sense of community for myself, really. A woman who owns a farm here and she'd heard me read my work somewhere. She liked it. And she wondered if I could come and read again and maybe invite a couple of friends. And I did. And then together we cooked up this idea that we'd have a poetry reading. But it turned into we had, I expected maybe 25, 35 people at the first reading, which is really good for a poetry reading. You know that.
Oh, yeah, really good.
Yeah. If you get 5 people and 2 family members together for a reading.
Yes.
It's wonderful. You're happy. And we had about 65 people at our first reading. And from there, we just, we'd have 150 people show up for our readings.
Wow. Were you giving away free food?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? No.
No?
And we actually had a tip jar. We didn't have any food, but we had a tip jar, and people were so generous and so much, so appreciative of it. And it's continued. That's what I really hope for. And I feel like that's happened in kind of wonderful ways, that people say, yes, I'll come and read. And the first year or two we handed out, the first year you got a jar of honey from the farm where we held our readings. They gave us a jar of honey for every poet. And so, and now we're able to give honorariums, which is really nice to be able to do, because poets, if they make a nickel, they feel lucky. So, the Northwest and Port Townsend, the town where I live in particular, has been is the home of Copper Canyon Press, a very internationally renowned poetry press. And then Grey Wolf also started here, another really distinguished independent press, and others as well.
Do you also have it as a class? Do people then get together or do they just come and read poetry and go home?
Well, this is our first year. We're not at the farm anymore. We're under the umbrella of a large arts organization here called Centrum. They run music festivals and a writers conference. And now for the first time, we have a writers workshop that's coming up in October. And I'm teaching with Rick Barrett and Melissa Kwasny, two of my favorite poets. So we'll do a five-day workshop up here.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, Centrum, if anybody wants to go to centrum.org and look for poetry on the Salish Sea, they'll find information about how to access that.
Now that you said that, I did attend your workshop. It was for one day, and I got to say you were generous. Okay, you weren't interested in telling us writers what to write. Instead, you asked questions that I think help us discover it ourselves. What's your philosophy as a teacher?
Writers are readers, first of all, in my experience. People who really become people who take their writing somewhat seriously. That they're readers, and read fairly widely in the genre or genres that are important to them, and the ones that aren't. Like if you're a poet, you should read nonfiction or fiction as well. So I always try to encourage people to do that. I'm a little suspicious of opening it for everybody in the gathering, the workshop, to throw in their 2 bits about your poetry, because it quickly becomes people trying to tell you how to write your work differently. I'd like it better if, or have you ever thought of that? And so that's why I don't do that a lot. I just like people to hear somebody read their own work, and then they read their own work, and then I offer some comments and maybe suggest some poets or other writers they might think about reading, or I say, your poem isn't done where you think it is. If you take that last stanza off, it'll be a stronger poem. You already wrote your ending. The last stanza isn't necessary. Or often what we do as poets is, maybe you find this in prose too, Steve, where we start doesn't need to be there. We can cut something out of the beginning because that's just getting us going, really. That's setting some kind of scene, and we don't need it. Not always, but sometimes that's what we need to do, is look to the beginning or the end. So that's part of how I think about workshops. And also, form. I think in the workshop this summer, I'll probably work with letters, epistolary poetry, letters, invite people to write letters and make prayers. And that should scare the bejeebers out of people, because a lot of people don't like to think in terms of prayer. But I think prayers can be made in all different ways. And I'm going to, really invite people to kind of push beyond their boundaries and think about what it means to make a prayer, and maybe leave room in our lives for praise, because God knows there's a lot of fires in this world. But what keeps us going, and what matters most to us, maybe that's a kind of prayer too.
Good. Well, I certainly appreciate that you were nice to this newbie in our little class, and it was just a lot of fun, just sitting around the table like we did. It was so much fun. I felt comfortable.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I think it's great. And you already know how to write, too. I mean, a number of people in that group were already, they didn't need the fundamentals, And so that was a pleasure, too, just to see what was important right then when we were gathered. What were you working on now? And what did the prompts bring up for you? And has anybody followed that since? I think that's really interesting.
So do you want to talk about your memoir, The Last Chance Motel? Without giving away too much?
Yeah. Well, I've been working on it and for quite a while, and I've put it away and given up on it a few times because I just didn't know where to take it. It really is a exploration of family, memory, place, a mother-daughter tale. My mother was a wonderful mom in many ways, and she was a really complicated woman. She also was an alcoholic, and that complicated our lives considerably. It was difficult to write in many ways, but when I was in Greece a few years ago with the poet Carolyn Forshey and then the wonderful Patricia Smith, who just collected her Pulitzer and National Book Award this year. And they were wonderful teachers. And I was talking to Carolyn Forshey one morning, and she said, memoir writers, and she's both a poet and a memoir writer. She said, memoir writers either abandon their books or they just determined to keep going. And so I thought it was a poetry workshop with Forshey and Patricia Smith. But when I came home from that, I started to write. I picked up the memoir again and wrote more, started and finished it. I don't know. It takes a while to write a book of prose. I would, poem. I love editing. So, a lot of my poems I've edited, I have 20 drafts of more, I like editing because I don't always know what a story or a poem, and there's crossover there in a narrative. The narrative shows up in poetry, it shows up in prose, in my work anyway, where it doesn't always show itself right away. As you point out so many times in your book, it doesn't always show itself. And then you think about it later, and that's when as you say, you carry the knowledge of what the book is trying to say, even though you don't know you carry it. And then finally it comes out and you go, oh yeah, I wonder where that came from. So yeah, I'm at the point where I'm sending it out to agents. Poets don't, in general, unless you've collected your Pulitzer, you don't have an agent. But if you haven't or never do, it doesn't matter for a poet. You send it directly to the presses themselves. But prose, you need an agent. That's just how the publishing world works now. So I'm in the process. I just sent it off to my 28th agent before I got on the Zoom with you.
Did you really? See, I would have to break down and cry.
Yeah, well, there are moments, for sure.
Yeah, you're a much better person than I am.
Hardly. No, I'm just perhaps more desperate than you. I want it to be in print. I want it published. Yeah. I'll keep going for a while if that list gets much longer. We'll see. But, community matters. And in poetry, yes, I have people who we read each other's manuscripts, and we encourage each other, and we go for walks, and we talk about how hard it is to do the next part, which is getting your work out in the world. That's true with prose, too, I went back to writing the memoir because Carolyn Forshey and then other writers, when I came home, encouraged me. And we talk about writing, right, Steve? We talk with other writers about writing. It's a huge part of our lives. So all of that stuff with community really matters to me. And I try to do my part in creating community because there are many writers that I suppose write alone. Did Faulkner have a community? I don't know. root, I think human beings need other human beings. I think we're built that way. And so, community is where we can find sustenance. Some of, what keeps us going as writers. Because as you say, it can be a slog, especially the part where you get it out in the world.
It's good to have friends. It's good to have friends who will give you their opinions on what's important to you.
Yeah.
So, and I like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes if what they say is not very good, I cry, but I'm pretty easy on that. So Kathryn, so I'm old, and I hope I'm not going to make you mad at me, but so we're about the same age, I think.
Yeah.
So here I am, 74, and I am looking forward to tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, and I'm planning all this stuff. I'm inspired by there you are as well. That I figured at 74 I'd be retired and I wouldn't be doing anything. And it's nice to be talking to someone else. And I just talked to a long line of someone else's who are our age and they're planning and moving forward, and it makes me feel good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I don't know how much longer I'll keep doing, organizing poets and, having readings and doing all that work. I enjoy it for the time being, and we'll see. I've always had others who help me like you do, who say, do you need any help? It's like, yeah, I do. I'm drowning in, do you know how to write a press release? You're hired. My website is kathrynhunt.net, and it's KATHRYNHUNT.net. Poetry on the Salish Sea is on the Centrum website, and that's the Centrum is CENTRUM.org. And you can go there, and all their festivals are there, and Poetry on the Salish Sea has its own page there. And you can get information about our upcoming workshop at October 21st to 25th. If anyone's a fan of Padraig Otuma, who does Poetry Unbound, he'll be here in Port Townsend in December, on December 12th, to give a reading. He's a wonderful poet.
If you could spend an afternoon with any writer in history, who would it be and why?
Couldn't I have a dinner party? I'd want Sappho. I'd want Anna Akhmatova, the great Russian poet, early 20th century. Well, yeah, she lived to 1960, I think. Why? Sappho, I'd want to hear the whole poem, so we have our fragments. Akhmatova is one of my heroes. And she survived. She came of age as a poet in the early teens, which was a pretty perilous time to be a poet going forward. And I'd want Osip Mandelstam and his wife Nadezhda Mandelstam, who wrote Hope. And they're Russian poets, or he's a Russian poet. She wrote prose. She wrote two amazing memoirs, Hope Against Hope and Hope Abandoned. He died in a transit camp. He was being sent to Siberia by Stalin. He's one of the great, great poets of the 20th century. Who else? Oh, I'd have lots of people. I might invite Faulkner to come, Toni Morrison. Yeah.
So you're not just going to go somewhere. You're having this at Port Townsend.
Yeah, it's going to be a dinner party. Yeah, I'd have to walk over. Well, Emily Dickinson. I'd want Emily Dickinson to be there. A poet named Diane Mikowski, who was really important to me when I was young. Judy Grahn, also very important when I was young. Yeah, I'd have a big table and invite them all, and invite Astrid Larsen too, because she's such a great organizer and wonderful artist as well.
Yeah, isn't she just a nice kid?
Yeah, she's great.
So you
yeah, and you, Steve, I'd invite you to come up with.
Oh, thank you. Well,
party.
I'll be the one serving the Pinot Noir then around the table, and they'll all leave thinking, "Oh, Kathryn's such a great cook," and look at that wine. So let me ask you this, though, because this gets to my next book, Sandcastle Windows. Would you want them to come after they're famous or before they're famous?
Oh,
And maybe some of them never knew they were famous.
yeah.
Isn't that a
Well,
shame?
they knew they were poets. I'd want them to come after they knew they were poets and writers.
Okay.
Yeah, I think yeah. After they understood that was their calling. Yeah.
Okay, because that's important when we send out the invitations.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It'd be wonderful to meet them.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
And to talk. Can you imagine the conversation?
Yeah, it'd be pretty great.
Around the table would be pretty fun, huh? Well, Kathryn,
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just I could keep adding. Lewis Hyde, the American, he wrote The Gift. You'd love that, Steve. Lewis Hyde, he's a essayist and nonfiction writer and a poet. He's very wonderful. Yeah, I would probably have to get a big hall, and rent a hall and fill it with all the people I'd want to invite.
Oh,
Thanks for that.
Is
idea.
there a hall in Port Townsend?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, well, I could take all these names, and after I edit this, I could ask ChatGPT to make an image of all these people around the table.
Yeah.
With Kathryn at the head of the table.
Virginia Woolf would need to be there, and Colette would have to be there. Violet Leduc would have to be there. Yeah, we'll just make a big party out of it.
Well, this is a great answer.
Good.
So, because it's not like everybody else's.
Oh, good.
So, and we never want to be like everybody else.
We can't be, turns out. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kathryn, thank you very much. I appreciate this. I appreciate that you were so nice to me during the workshop, and we just had a great time there. And it was just a bunch of nice people there.
It was. It was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
So, and you came all the way down there and stayed and all that. Well, it was a little bit cooler when we were there than it is here now.
Yeah, it was hot. It was hot down there, for sure.
It's hotter
but
now.
I really loved what I got to see of the desert, though. Yeah, that was great. So thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate the chance to talk with you again, and I hope our paths cross.
Okay, me too.
Okay,
And
good.
boy, I'd sure like to come up in December.
Yeah, that would be great.
If only I wasn't retired and poor. Things would be wonderful. All right, Kathryn, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Artbox Podcast. We're recording from our home studio inside the Mesquite Steam Center, right here in the beautiful Mojave Desert, where creativity and curiosity meet under wide open skies. From the written word and poetry to collage, brush art, pencil, ink, fabric, and pottery, from theater and song to archaeology in our public lands, we celebrate the many ways creativity shows up in the world around us. You can find us on Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Boomplay, or your favorite podcast app. We'd love to hear from you. Find us at theartboxpodcast.com. Drop us a note anytime at artboxvv@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends so they can join the conversation too. Most importantly, take a moment to follow and support the artists and creative souls who join us here, because their stories are what make the Artbox come alive. This is Daisy, and until next time, keep creating, keep exploring, and keep sharing your story.